No one expects a locked nursery to become a crime scene. No one imagines that a simple act of cruelty, hidden behind wealth and polished smiles, could push an ordinary woman into a life-or-death decision. But on a quiet afternoon inside a luxury estate where rules mattered more than people, one mistake exposed a truth so ugly it couldn't be buried. A maid was trapped. 2 infants were crying. And the woman who held the key believed money made her untouchable. What happened next would ripple through the household, the community, and a courtroom in ways no one saw coming. Because when desperation meets injustice, who really holds the power? The estate sat behind wrought iron gates that gleamed like a promise of safety and status. Perfect hedges lined the drive. Security cameras blinked silently from every corner. This was the kind of place where problems were supposed to stay invisible, where staff were expected to move quietly, efficiently, and without being noticed. Maria Alvarez had worked in homes like this for most of her adult life. At 36, she carried herself with the calm discipline of someone who had learned early that stability was earned, not given. Her life revolved around routine. Early mornings, careful schedules, and the quiet pride of doing her job well. She sent money home every month. She followed rules meticulously. She avoided attention. When she accepted the position as live-in nanny and housekeeper at the Hawthorne estate, it felt like a blessing. The pay was better. The accommodations were clean. And most importantly, the job came with a sense of permanence. The Hawthorne twins, barely 6 months old, had become the center of her days. Feeding them, holding them, learning the subtle differences between their cries. Their dependence grounded her in a way nothing else had. The estate sat behind wrought iron gates that gleamed like a promise of safety and status. Perfect hedges lined the drive. Security cameras blinked silently from every corner. This was the kind of place where problems were supposed to stay invisible, where staff were expected to move quietly, efficiently, and without being noticed. Maria Alvarez had worked in homes like this for most of her adult life. At 36, she carried herself with the calm discipline of someone who had learned early that stability was earned, not given. Her life revolved around routine. Early mornings, careful schedules, and the quiet pride of doing her job well. She sent money home every month. She followed rules meticulously. She avoided attention. When she accepted the position as live-in nanny and housekeeper at the Hawthorne estate, it felt like a blessing. The pay was better. The accommodations were clean. And most importantly, the job came with a sense of permanence. The Hawthorne twins, barely 6 months old, had become the center of her days. Feeding them, holding them, learning the subtle differences between their cries. Their dependence grounded her in a way nothing else had. The estate's rules, posted neatly on the nursery wall, loomed over her. Maria read each one carefully, internalizing every restriction. Eleanor watched from the doorway, her arms crossed, expression unyielding. Cameras above monitored silently. Every movement recorded, every infraction visible to an authority who tolerated nothing. The day everything unraveled began like any other. The twins were restless, their sleep schedule disrupted by teething. Maria adjusted, as she always did. She moved carefully through the nursery, rocking one child while soothing the other with practiced patience. Eleanor had left the house earlier than usual. Her instructions were brief and sharp. She reminded Maria of the nursery rules before leaving, her gaze lingering just long enough to make the reminder feel like a warning. As the afternoon stretched on, the twins grew increasingly distressed. Feeding time approached, but one child began crying early, the kind of cry that signaled genuine hunger. Maria checked the clock. 10 minutes remained. She hesitated. Breaking rules had consequences here. Written warnings led to probation. Probation led to termination. Termination meant losing housing, income, and stability. Maria Guatif. The crying escalated. The second twin joined in. Maria moved to prepare the bottles, stepping briefly into the adjacent prep area. When she returned, the nursery door was closed. Locked. At first, she assumed it was a mistake. She tested the handle. It didn't budge. Panic fluttered in her chest. She knocked. Called out. Silence. Eleanor had activated the remote lock system, a feature she'd recently insisted on installing for security. The system allowed certain rooms to be locked remotely. Maria hadn't known the nursery was one of them. The crime became desperate, red-faced, breathless. Maria searched the room. No phone, no emergency release. The rule forbidding food meant the bottles were outside the room. Minutes passed, then more. She pounded on the door. She shouted. No one came. The twins' cries weakened into hoarse sobs. Maria's rasa. Protocol dissolved into instinct. She remembered a sealed emergency nutrition pouch stored in the nursery cabinet, placed there months earlier during a safety audit. Using it would violate Eleanor's rule. Not using it could mean something far worse. Maria tore it open and fed the babies, hands shaking, heart pounding. Relief washed over her as their cries softened. She held them close, whispering reassurances that felt as much for herself as for them. When the door finally unlocked, Eleanor stood on the other side. Her expression was not relief. It was fury. Eleanor saw the empty pouch, the broken seal, the evidence of disobedience. She didn't ask questions. She didn't listen. She accused Maria of defiance, of contamination, of disrespect. Before Maria could explain, Eleanor locked the door again. This time, deliberately. Hours passed. Maria rationed water from the bathroom sink. She paced. She watched the babies breathing. She counted minutes in her head to stay calm. When Eleanor finally returned, she issued consequences. Suspension. Termination pending review. Maria was escorted out that evening with a single bag. But Eleanor made one fatal mistake. The security system logged everything, including the time the nursery was locked, including who controlled it, including how long it remained sealed. And someone else had access to those logs. Charles Hawthorne returned unexpectedly the next morning. He'd been alerted by his legal team after a routine system audit flagged an anomaly, a locked nursery exceeding safe duration thresholds. What followed was not a shouting match or a dramatic confrontation. It was worse, an investigation. Security footage reviewed in silence. Timestamps analyzed. Medical reports from the pediatrician showing elevated stress markers in the twins. Written warnings documented. Eleanor's justifications laid bare. Maria was called in, shaking but composed. She provided her account. The emergency nutrition pouch. The locked door. The hours trapped. Eleanor watched as her authority dissolved under scrutiny. Her explanations sounded hollow against data. Her insistence on rules now read as negligence. Then came the legal reality. False imprisonment. Child endangerment. Abuse of power. The estate's lawyers shifted tone. Quickly. By the end of the week, Eleanor was removed from the property. Her engagement quietly dissolved. Her name erased from the HOA board. The community that once praised her perfection now whispered her downfall. And Maria? She didn't ask for revenge. She asked for accountability. The settlement was private, but its impact was unmistakable. Maria received compensation that changed her life. Legal protection. A permanent position under new management. Counseling support. Most importantly, acknowledgement. The Hawthorne estate implemented sweeping reforms. Staff protections. Emergency overrides. Independent oversight. What had once been a fortress of control became a case study in abuse of power. Eleanor faded from public view. Her social standing evaporated. Invitations stopped coming. Boards distanced themselves. The same rules she wielded so ruthlessly now boxed her in. Maria Stath. She remained with the twins, now thriving toddlers who reached for her instinctively. The nursery door was never locked again. The story spread quietly at first, then louder. Online forum, advocacy groups, legal seminars. It became a reminder that authority without empathy is dangerous. That rules without humanity can harm. That the people we overlook often hold the greatest strength. Because in the end, it wasn't wealth that decided the outcome. It was evidence. It was courage. And it was a woman who chose to protect two lives, even when the system told her not to. And maybe that's the real question left behind. How many injustices survive only because no one expects the quiet ones to fight back.